Hello and welcome to the Production Pod, a place where we meet and talk all things creative production, from TV broadcast, commercial and film, a place where we unite with industry professionals. I'm Craig Reeves and have worked in the world of post-production since being introduced to the industry since 2006, and have since played a role building a virtual post-production facility named Pickled. You are obviously listening to this via a platform, but please let me make you aware of other channels. The Production Pod is available as a videocast series over on Facebook. We are on YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts as well. You can simply find us by searching for the Production Pod. Today, we are chatting with Anthony Brownmoore, co-founder of London's BlueSpill, specializing in post-production and title design for film and TV. Anthony, hello.
Hello, Craig.
How you doing, mate? You all right?
I'm all right. Apart from sweltering, I'm surviving.
Weather is hot today. So, Anthony, we know one another from, which is the beginning of a lot of these podcasts. I know a lot of people from Ragdoll, so I need to start interviewing people that I don't know from Ragdoll. But Anthony, I do know you from Ragdoll.
I mean, you can make something up if you like. I could have met you in Tesco.
I met you in Tesco one day. We were both buying frozen peas, and the petit pois was the connecting force. I'd gone to college, the same college you had gone to. I then went to university, which you didn't go to university, and then I got my first job, and you were about 2.5, maybe 3, can't remember how many years ahead of me. And I was like, I recognise you. You went to my college, and you're like, now you're like, what? You're heading up this department? Like, what's going on? It's really strange.
Well, that's because you stayed at the college, Craig, and I left out the back door. But I don't remember you at the college. What course were you on at college?
I was on the BTEC National Diploma in Media Production. I think, were you the HND, or did you do the BTEC?
I was on the A level.
Oh, you did the A level.
Yeah.
In fact, we knew each other from before that, because I think you used to work with my friend Neil, and we're both living in Stratford, so we kind of
that's
it's a small
right.
town.
You used to work at Stratford Leisure Centre, did you not?
Probably did cross the petit pois aisle many times.
Well, there you go. There's the link. I do remember you coming in. I seem to remember seeing you before Ragdoll, or knowing about you, and then you coming into Ragdoll, and you came in on in the Night Garden, didn't you? You came in as a on-set, I'd say assistant, dog's body, circle holder, whatever your job title.
It was a runner that kind of got embellished to be circle holder. I used to have to hold these circles that were like different sizes, and they'd line the cameras up so that the 1 meter and the 50 centimeter circles would match, and then therefore the 1 meter sized character would be the same size as the 50 centimeter character in.
Hang on. That was way more genius than all the measurements we were doing. So we get the calculations and have to double the height of the camera, double the distance of the camera, and then you just walk in with your circle and just line this up.
Yeah, that was it. It was because all the characters were obviously one scale, all the same, and then we needed like Macapaka, for example, to be half the size. So we would line the cameras up to the circle so they matched, and one would be half the size of the other, wasn't it? And the same with the Tomley Boos that I think were 2/3 or 1/3 smaller.
Yes, annoyingly 2/3 smaller, I think.
It was a long time ago.
Or 1/3 smaller. I can't remember the maths.
But genius idea. I came in, all of this was really in play, and I was the dog's body for yourself and Lee. More so Lee, because I was on set with him.
You were out on the set with Lee, and I was stuck in the studio with the machines. Yeah.
You were back at base and chilling, and me and Lee were
in the rain. Bloody hot. Put air conditioning in, and like rattled the walls. I remember that. Yeah, good days.
Yeah. Lee was the VFX supervisor, by the way, just for anybody listening. Lee Phillips. You'd obviously quit college. What happened there? How did that come about?
Well, it was difficult to hold down a job and stay at college at the same time. They kind of got wise to each other, so it was one or the other. No, what happened was I went in for an interview at Ragdoll while I was still at college. So I think I was halfway through. No, I was near the end of my first year of college, or my first term, whatever you call it. I can't remember. It's been so long. And I had my mother actually was working at Ragdoll in the what was the department? Children's Resources?
Children's Responses.
Children's Responses, that's the one, thank you.
Yeah. They would take content, show it to children, and then get their response from it, and then use that to research and develop the shows.
That's right. It's a very, very important part of the whole process. So she was working there, and at that time, I was into editing, and that was why I did media at college. I was into the effects, and I was into, you know, how you cut things, how do you film stuff, get it off that tape, put it into something else, chop it all up, and then put it back out to another tape. That process was back in, you know, early 2000s. That was fairly difficult to figure out how that was done. So you
couldn't do it on your mobile phone like you can now with certain things, you know.
You could barely play Snake on your mobile phone, let alone a bloody video.
The idea
together.
of putting a graphic over a picture was fairly new back then.
You had the title tool on your VHS camcorder, and that was about as graphic-y as it got. Or you filmed something on Perspex over the top. Proper days. Anyway, I remember my mum going to Lynn Hawkins, who was the head of editing services at that time, and still is, of Ragdoll, and said, "Oh, my son's really into editing and stuff." And she goes, "Oh, well, get him in for work experience." Unbeknownst to me at this time, I'd already applied for the job. And I went in for the interview for the job with Lynn and Lee, which they very kindly turned me down on. But then my mum had a word in their ear, and they came back and offered me work experience instead. So instead of getting paid for the job, I got to do it for free. So that was fun. Went in, did 6 weeks of that, and then a week on the studio floor as a runner. And after that time, they offered me the job. So I then did have to quit college. So I think it was during my first week back in term 2 of college.
Was that an easy decision?
I left. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it was very easy for me because, I mean, for me, I'm very focused and very headstrong about, I want to learn this and I want to know how that's done. And if I can see a place that's doing exactly that and I want to hone in on that, I'll go there. It doesn't matter if it's an educational facility or if it's actually a facility. But I saw the path in with Ragdoll and knowing what I wanted to know as the right decision for me. And I was supported every step of the way with it, and touch wood, so far, turned out to be the right move.
We did very well. I mean, in the fact that I suppose it was quite a smallish department when you joined. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes, it was very much a family. There was only like a few of us. I mean, I think there was 5 of us in the department then, I think. And
you had a lot of room to, I suppose, learn new things, grow with the company as the projects are getting bigger.
Oh yeah, I mean, all the opportunities were there, and we were small enough that if you were made to muck in and help out, then that's what you did. You could actually get on the show. You could do a bit. I mean, I remember one of my first jobs being given a Teletubbies compilation VHS to edit together. And for me, coming from college, wanting to get into TV and stuff like this, and now suddenly I'm doing an internationally recognized brand and you're putting the video out, that's like being a rock star when you're 17.
Yeah. It's actually going to be seen by people, which is the goal.
It's like, hey, someone's going to watch this, not just my tutor who's going to give me a B.
Yeah. So what was the first, Teletubbies was your first project with Ragdoll, or did you come in the early days of Night Guard?
No, technically my first program that I worked on was Boobar, which I don't know how many people remember, but it was a CITV program with a lot of multicolored things, space
fancy
creatures.
Characters.
I think they were. They lived in these pods, so multicolored space creatures. But it was a dance and move exercise program, so they would do dances, and then you would have a little story, and then it would be the end. And I got involved in that. And in fact, when I was working in work experience at Ragdoll, they were developing that program, and then I got to see it through to filming and completion. So that was quite a good ride for my first project.
And how many years were you at Ragdoll for?
Wow, it seemed like I was there for a lifetime, but I think I worked it out. It was only about 6, maybe 6.5 years.
6.5 years. That's still, I mean, it's a long time in today's standards, because people will have a job for a year, 2 years, move on after that. Or their employment isn't for that long because of the company they work for. There's very few, I think, places that keep people on for that longer time.
Well, I guess it all depends on you as well, because to stay in a place for that long, there's got to be a lot of opportunities for growth, because there's only so long you can sit doing the one part of that job. unless you're really involved with something. And the good thing about, where we were in those days is that Ragdoll was that kind of place where you could get involved in a lot of the different parts of the job. I mean, I'd been out with the children filming their responses to stuff. I'd been on set doing the filming. I'd been doing the edit. We'd come in on afternoons to do the grading when we weren't supposed to, just to make things look better. All those kind of things you could do because that was the kind of place it was, which I think is why I stayed there for 6 years, because...
And you had a pair of keys, so you could go in and stay late and lock up and come in at will, to improve on things.
As you frequently did. I mean, it was one of those places that you got out of it what you put into it, and I think that's what I was looking for then. It was a real opportunity to, if you wanted to sink your teeth in and really get into it. I mean, it set me up with all the knowledge that I have now, even to this day, still from there.
So over those 6 years, what would you say the most challenging part of your job was?
If I was to go for an ultimate challenge, it's a program and it's in the night garden. That was the ultimate challenge. We used to call it Ben-Hur for 3-year-olds. Because today there's not much material out there, and obviously there's stuff we can't say, but there's no real making of that show when there really, really should have been. Yeah, there was no other teams, was there, recording anything behind the scenes or what have you? No, there was, because, and you could understand it from where Ragdoll had come from, with Teletubbies and everything, that they were being, cards close to their chest with the production of their next show. But in terms of technically advanced for the time and what we were attempting to do for a children's TV program on a HD channel that didn't exist at the time when we started it, there was a lot of risks, a lot of learning as you were doing it. Because In the Night Garden was the first HD children's program, wasn't it, for the BBC? Or wasn't the first BBC HD program? I need to fact check that, but I do believe it's one of the first BBC HD shows that was made, because it was sitting on a shelf on HD Cam before BBC HD was even launched. Yeah. So good decision to go HD. Yeah, it was a bit. And the biggest challenges that came out of that obviously was technical. The machines could just about cope with HD. It couldn't really cope that well with HD sped up 300% and then, interlaced and then 4 layers keyed over the top of each other. It started to struggle a little bit then. But even the on-set challenges, and as you've mentioned before, our colleague in crime, Lee Phillips, you've got to give every hat off to him for the stuff that he pulled out of the bag for how to actually make that show work, technically. It was stressful, and I think he had the whole weight of VFX on his shoulders when he was on that set, and just all of these devices that kind of, he'd come up with, how to make the scaling work. And I do remember key tests where we went to TX in London, and we sat there for an afternoon trying every coloured chroma key under the sun to see which combinations would work best with which characters. And we ended up coming away with the fact that blue screen was going to work the best for most of them, which is why the blue boards were everywhere. Trying to key Iggle Piggle, the bluest character known to man, against a blue screen, that's my biggest challenge. Yeah. But then everyone used to say that we're using HD Cam SR and it had all the data you needed and it should just pick like that. I mean, that maybe not, but that just about. And then coming in on the weekends. That and a bit of a weekend. Map colour back in. But I mean, it did work in the end, and we did it. And there's still, there's a lot of Night Garden you look at and you go, why are they that size? And you ignore the question. And then you look at other bits of Night Garden, and I've had arguments with, playful arguments with Dirk, the director, about which section of it is blue screen and which section isn't. Yeah. There are bits of it you don't know. Yeah. You will know the bits that are, because obviously that can't happen. But there's other bits where they're just all together that you would never know. And of course, the tail end of shooting, when the summer was coming to a close and the nights were drawing in, they were picking up episodes using another studio, an interior studio, rather than using the main set. I think the set needed to be deconstructed, so they'd shot a lot of the action against Blue, just a couple of studios down from Ragdoll, and then all of the work at that point is then composited, because there's no live. That's right. Pieces. I mean, we'd run out of year. Yeah. I mean, there's only so long you can shoot in the Midlands, and so it's there was a real time limit on it. And you get to the end and you're like, well, we need all these extra bits put in. So you've got no choice but to go digital.
I remember motion control cameras. I should actually say what your job was at this point for...
Runner.
Yeah, was the runner.
It never changed.
You were working on a bit of software called the Flint, which is an Autodesk Flint, which is now classified as a flame, I suppose, arguably.
Well, back in the day, Autodesk used to split all of their software packages up into bits. I always used to equate them to like boxes of milk tray with all the nice ones taken out. That's how they used to do their software back then. So you had Flint, Flame, Fire, Inferno, Toxic, Combustion. You had all this like range of them, and all of them just had different nodes inside of them. But yeah, primarily we were Flint and Smoke were the two that we ran. But I was running the Flint because that was the one that was going to do the most heavy duty lifting on the visual effects side.
Yeah, and then that was supplying the Smokes, which were timeline based to do the online, putting all the shots together. And
that's right, because that's back before the days when we were allowed multi-layer timelines, which now seems like it's just a given thing. I mean, free software has multi-layer timelines, but back then the bee's knees of compositing software you could only have one track.
Mad times, but now you're expected to do more than one person's job, so it's kind of...
Well, it is the one-man band now, isn't it? It's like a whole post-production suite inside one machine, and you've got to do everything. I mean, we've put our own nails in our caskets by asking for all this stuff, and now here it is, and you're like, well, you used to have the justified excuse of like, can't do that, mate. See, in post-production, we used to have the teeth dry like builders, but we don't anymore. You can't go... Sorry, mate, can't do that. It's like, oh, I can actually.
Yeah. I suppose now you're expected to work a timeline, work VFX, and I suppose jump in and out of different software packages, like, for example, Autodesk, but also Adobe are the two that get used quite a lot together.
Yeah, I mean, I remember back to the days of the Creative Suite coming about and being a thing. But now you've got so much in one package there. I mean, you've got like the highest end photo editing equipment, you've got a very competent editor, and you've got a great compositing and motion graphics package. That's that's a very appealing set. I mean, I would have killed for that back in the days when I was trying to learn all this stuff, and I was running off free demo softwares that I'd found attached to a magazine somewhere about editing, because try and download anything bigger than 5 meg from the internet back in 2001, and that was it. You were there for a day. But yeah, I mean, the choice that's out there now is it's a little bit overwhelming, I think, for people coming into the industry, of how much there is. Like, well, what do I focus on? What do I do? And that, I think, that's kind of the key to it for me, is like focus your skills, because with I always say, like, I hate to use the phrase like you can do it on your laptop, but you can. And if you are going to be able to do everything on your laptop, try and focus on where your heart lies, or what you actually want to do. Get good at that, then have the rest of it as kind of like a support network. You're like, well, I can do this, but I want to do that. You know what I mean? Because that's the only way you can really focus any kind of skill set. Because if you see the one man bands out on the street collecting money. He's got the drums on the back, he's got the harmonica in the mouth, he's got the cymbals on the hands, and he looks fantastic, and he's a spectacle, and he's great, and you give him a quid, and that's amazing. When was the last time you bought an album by a one-man band?
Ed Sheeran, could we argue? Maybe.
But that's kind of like how I think of it in the industry now. It's like that you can do everything.
And I think the problem that we had back in the early days of our careers is that you'd have lots of different software packages, all very expensive as well, all separately packaged, and each
prohibitively so.
And each one we'd have to bring something out of one into the other. And now there's a lot more connectivity and like a lot more fluid workflows between these systems. I mean, being able to open a Premiere project with an edit, bring it in and out of After Effects, and then go back into After Effects and make an adjustment, and it's all connected that way. The same with the way the Flame is working, in the fact that you can now swap media around and use the timeline within the system. You're not having to go to another software package to bring it back in.
I think you're right. I mean, it has become a lot easier now that everything kind of talks to each other. But that being said as well, because you're in the industry, they always seem to fix one bit and then break the future. So it's like, right, okay, this bit now works, but we've all moved on. We're over here now. So when you've just about got HD rendering happening like lightning, everyone's doing 4K. You're like, for God's sake, now I've got to make that work. I can't even play it back. And that's how it goes. I mean, something that didn't really exist outside of film when we started, and we certainly never hit it at Ragdoll in the early days, was color management. That wasn't a thing. There was no such thing as color management.
Well, nothing was log, was it? Like it would be shot today?
No. Yeah, it was all shot rec. Rec 709. That was your stuff.
That's a color space.
Yeah.
A Rec 709 log is a color space. These days, everything would be shot in log and then converted into a rec color space. But no color space back in those days. But to be fair, missing that part out of that process on that scale and without needing it was probably a really good choice. Didn't need it.
Not having that part of the, because speaking from like where I am now and what we do a lot of stuff for Netflix and Amazon, and we still do stuff for film, and we still do stuff for TV, and everybody of course has their own little basket of goodies of what they want. So we made the decision, I said, we're probably going to do this. We made the decision in January to convert all of our workflow to ACES. So the ACES stands for, I believe, the Academy Color Encoding System. I think that's what ACES stands for. And of course, there's loads of flavors of that because you can't just have one, got to have lots. So we work in ACES CG. And the reason that we did that is that ACES, being one of the newest of the color management pipelines, is it's got a wide enough color gamut inside of it that it can contain all of the others. So if we need to get from ACES to anything else, we can. But it's not possible really to go the other way. So if Netflix want our stuff in ACES and we've done it all in rec, you're going to have a bad time. So you have to make sure, color gamut, by the way, is just like the amount of colors that are available to you. So ACES contains colors in the spectrum that we can't even see. So that's
it's like a one
useful
bucket fits all, isn't it? You can put everything in it, and then you can take whatever you want out of it, and you're not compromising anywhere or having to reconvert things later down the pipeline.
It's a massive bucket, and Rec's a very small bucket, and that's where all that kind of data is, and that's what your TV can see and most of your monitors can see. But we work in stuff that's much wider, just in case, because you never know what's coming in the future.
Before we get into your current role, we're still in Ragdoll days. Motion control, early days of motion control, layering all the characters in the show into one big dance. That must have been a bit of a head scratch, right? Yeah,
I mean, more than a bit. I remember there's a really cool shot, which I don't think ever made it anywhere, but it was a test shoot that we did for the motion control cameras when we were first figuring out the scaling of Night Garden. I don't even think the forest was built. And it was a pan down all the characters. So we go from Iggle Piggle Upsy Daisy down to Macapaca and the Tombliboos and all of that. And that was a really, really cool shot. And I thought, if we get more of them in the show, that'll look really good. And then we did the motion control shoot. And we found out why we didn't do a lot of those in the show, because the time it took to set this all up was astronomical. But then once you'd programmed in your movements to the camera, you got to think of it like doing keyframes in an animation software. You'd program the cameras to do their moves, and then the rigs would play it back at whatever speed you set. Because as you quite rightly said before, the characters in Night Garden are all sped up differently. So that meant the motion control rigs on each pass had to move at different speeds.
And a motion control camera will repeat the same move over and over again. Technically, it will repeat the same move over and over again. It should do on paper.
Technically, that's what it's built to do. It's built to do the same move over and over and over again. It's the ones that we were using, which was a Milo rig, I believe. It wasn't technically built to do the same move over and over again at different speeds. It wasn't technically supposed to be able to do that, but they managed to do it. And yeah, it was amazing seeing it come together, because when we were live on the studio floor, we had I think we had an Ultimate on there, so we could roughly see what a few of the layers were going to look like when they were on top of each other and whether they were slipping around. But we were really like shooting, and Lee had worked out the maths, so Lee knew where it was at, and he knew that it was going to work, and faith was in Lee. And then when it came down to the machines, and we're there with all these layers of HD, because we think, so you got Iggle Piggle, Upsy Daisy, Tombliboos, Macapaca, Pontapines, and the set. So we were mixing 6 layers of HD together in a machine that used to crash when you rendered 2. So I remember staying there nights upon nights rendering that, and then having to get a camera tracker in to build the storybook set that was going in the background. So that was, those were massive troubles, because the data, it wasn't, usually now you would have someone that would either match move the shots for you, or they would clean up the motion control data to make sure it worked. But we didn't have the time luxury of that kind of stuff. So when the motion control data came in and it was all upside down, a different speed and backwards, and the camera just flew off into space, we were just like, well, we've got to think of another solution to do this. So we ended up getting camera tracking software and tracking that in. But it's funny, motion control stuff now, it must be just such a different beast. It's been so long since I've seen where it's gone, but back then, it was, you had to be disciplined on what you were shooting.
I mean, I've done a motion control shoot, and it was a stop frame shoot with a motion control rig, and you were lining up 5 or 6 plates. You can guarantee that there were frames missing, slightly different bits were off, and you would spend a few days just basically fixing the plates before you actually managed to start comping. But
it's the slippage. It's the slippage that used to get me. It's like if something's slightly off on it, one element is slipping over the floor because it looks like it's not in the right place in space.
It has to be deadlocked. So actually, you were the first person to introduce me to the Flame back then, and you spent a lot of time teaching me, which I'm very grateful for, the ways of
it's my fault.
batch batch setups and what have you, and eventually I progressed within the company to work on that gear, thankfully actually, because you'd left. So thanks.
Dead man's shoes.
Excellent. you moved on.
Yeah, but I remember I made you pay for it before I left, though, because I had you rotoscoping Tomliboos and Macapacker's arse, as I remember. Because that bit that would bubble over the key, so I was like, Craig will do that.
I did do a lot of map making. I think I spent 3 days rotoscoping a Pinky Punk window, and I think because I'd taken maybe 2.5 days more than I should have done, everyone gave me a certificate and a bottle of wine. It was very kind of you. A little bit of a piss take, but heartwarming memories.
That's great. Thanks for that, Matt, by the way. Look great.
No worries. I'm sure someone probably redid it after I handed it over.
No. I started doing it and I went, I haven't got time for this. No. You did a great job.
Thank you. Very grateful for the opportunity. So you moved on, and you went freelance and moved down south. Is that right?
I did, yes. So after Ragdoll, I decided to stretch the wings a bit and move to London and try the freelance scene, which is quite it's daunting prospect when you've come from a small country town. Stratford is still technically a small country town, and then to think, I'll just go to the bright lights of London, I'll get a job, that'll be fine. Launching into that was a little bit daunting and a little bit different than I thought it would be. There was a lot of afternoons spent in internet cafes researching and trying to find post-production places and firing out emails upon emails and just hoping that there would be a sniff of a job.
And what was your first freelance gig?
My first freelance gig, it was for a place called HMX Media. They did in-store kiosk demos for Sony cameras. Okay. And my first gig was making this instructional video for a Sony Happy Snapper camera, putting the footage inside the screen, because they had all these lovely CG renders come over from India, very nice, all off the CAD drawings, and I had to track all the screens into the back of them and put all the supers and all that kind of stuff over it, which was quite different from what I was doing in Ragdoll. I'd gone from like very, very, very intensive compositing work to, can you track a screen for 2 days? Yeah, I can do that. That's okay. Yeah, but I was doing that in After Effects, you see, because the thing about Flame and Flint is it is a bit of a, like, you have to have proved yourself on it to get a job on it. You have to have a catalogue of work on it. It's very difficult to just jump into London and say, hey, I want to do this now. And they're like, well, what have you done before? well, I did all this, but that's not what we're doing.
You had to kind of like worked at the mill or something like the NPC or wherever that had these, by the dozen, and work your way up through the ranks, and then they'll never be able to get anywhere because the person that's at the top of that food chain never leaves because they're on such a good whack that you have to leave in order to progress because you're never going to take that man's job.
They've got themselves written into the contract, that they can't be dethroned.
Yeah.
So I started out freelancing on After Effects. I did quite a few jobs of that. I ended up doing another kids' TV show as well called Uncle Max, which was good fun. I was on that for a few episodes, and then I was just doing odds and sods around London until I got a job doing music videos at Smoke and Mirrors. That was still a freelance job, but I'd ended up then going to like onlining music videos, which was fairly simple compared to what I'd been on. But that was then on Avid DS. So that was another software package, and you don't get many people like going to Avid DS now. It's either you've learnt it in the early 2000s and you can still operate it, but you don't have many people coming up and still doing it. So luckily, when I was at Ragdoll, I'd gone on quite a few editing courses, so I knew how Avids worked, and Avid DS was our online editor on BooBar, so I knew how that system worked. So I could freelance it. So I did that, but then I got quite a good relationship with the head of Smoke and Mirrors at that time, and she said, we've got an in-house position going at CHI and Partners, which is an advertising agency in London. And I was like, well, okay, I'm not interested, thanks very much, that's lovely for the offer, but no thank you. So she got me in for another freelance job and kept on it. She goes like, you need to check out this place. I was like, okay, fine, we'll go and check it out. And then I fell in love with the team. I mean, Brett Kelsey, who was heading it at the time, is one of the loveliest men known to man. And he's just, I could feel his enthusiasm for the department. They wanted to grow it. And I was like, I see this now. This is the same thing. They're going to grow. They're going to put new stuff in. There's room for something here. So then I took my first full-time employed job in London as an online editor for this Smoke and Mirrors offshoot in CHI and Partners. So I'd gone from doing broadcast children's television to very obscure music videos to doing advertising. That was quite a path. So now I'm in a completely different mindset from where I started.
Advertising, so it kind of captures everybody in the end, doesn't it? The commercial world.
If you want to do this gig, you're going through advertising at some point. Especially in the world of onlining and stuff like that, you will get caught. And I think that was kind of the natural thing for the line of like Flame and Smoke. I mean, when I was doing the advertising gig in CHI, Autodesk did the unthinkable and launched Smoke on Mac. Because before then, Smoke, Flame, Flyer, Flint, Inferno were all Linux based. So that was very prohibitive for even like learning it at home. You couldn't.
And you needed a very expensive system to run it as well.
You did, yeah. I mean, I remember the first Flint in Ragdoll costing the same as a house. That, with all the drives and everything. You think about what you get now. It's another world. But that was something I managed to introduce to this CHI and Partners. I got them to buy a Smoke on Mac. They had a DS there, and we got rid of that and got the Smoke on Mac. And I was like, right. Back on the Smoke now. I can get my reel up and I can get back to where I want to be, and that was it. Then I stayed there for 3 years, heading up. I did a lot of adverts that you've seen. Sorry, a lot of stuff. But then I got to the point where I was like, how long do I want to spend doing stuff that people are going to fast forward? It's like you gone from having a job satisfaction of like literally getting letters that people were annoyed that it wasn't on television anymore, to knowing that you're one of those people that people install ad blocker for. It's not a great feeling career-wise to go like, I've gone from that to that. Okay, maybe I'll think about shifting it. I ended up doing another job for Nice Biscuits, doing more music videos there actually. I did a few adverts, but it was more music video based stuff. And I was only there for about 8 months, I think, before I decided that I was going back freelance, because I just had the birth of my first son. So I was like, well, I want to spend time with him, and I know a bit better now how London works. I could probably freelance a bit, so maybe I'll do that. I did, and then it was only about 5 months before we set up BlueSpill.
Yeah, so you set up BlueSpill with your business partner, Alison.
Indeed.
And yeah, how was it transitioning from freelance to having a company? Because it's not just a case of saying, hey, it's Thursday, I'm a freelancer, go to bed, wake up and say, hey, I've got a company, it's BlueSpill. And by the way, not doing any of that freelance work anymore. I only do project, studio-based stuff now. And it's not that simple, is it? It's not an overnight thing.
No, it's not simple at all. It's really, really hard. And one of the first things you question yourself about is, okay, so I've got this like bank of freelance clients. How do I suddenly tell them I'm not coming to them anymore? They have to bring stuff to my place and do it here.
And not only that, your day rate is this much. A studio rate, I mean, obviously, the idea is growing the account, growing the business, trying to explain to somebody that it's not this much anymore. It's kind of like this much and, testing the water.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would realistically say that transition and that growth took about 2.5 years to go from purely freelance into, right, we're a company now, it now costs more and we're not coming to you. That's kind of the progression. The onus is on Alison for actually making the move and getting the office, because at first we were working from home and it was just me and Alison working in our kitchen doing odds and sods for feature documentaries, which was kind of where we'd moved into by then. And then we decided, Alison decided that it was time for us to get out of the kitchen and have a base in Soho, which would help us entice new clients, because it would be much easier for them to send us an email and say, hey, we're thinking about doing this kind of thing. We'll say, we're literally down the road from you. Pop on by, have a cup of coffee and let's have a chat about this, rather than, do you fancy coming around for dinner? It was a much easier sell for that. And that was absolutely the right decision to do it. So we took on an office let for 6 months, because they were going to demolish it. So the risk was small. So we know, like, okay, with 6-month lease, there's no chance to extend here because this place is going. But if this works, then we can find another place and extend. And it did work. And we ended up finding another place. But yeah, that initial period of trying to get clients to understand that we were now a company and not just an individual freelancer, and all invoices were coming from a place called BlueSpill that they'd never heard of before. That transition took a while, but weirdly, I think the clients were more on board with it than we initially feared that they would be. I think a lot of that in the early days was us holding back and not wanting to give the impression that we were a company now. And I remember that in the early days, not having much work, I would still freelance some of my old places, like CHI and Nice Biscuits and stuff. I would still go out to them and freelance. And in fact, I remember Nice Biscuits being the first ones to actually give us work to actually do at BlueSpill, rather than me having to go and use their facility, because they were full. So it made sense for them to send stuff out. And that's where I started getting more bold and going like, okay, we can do this, because the argument is now that, well, we don't have to take up your suites. You can give us the stuff, we'll work on it, give it you back, and it's all cushy. And it's been done somewhere well. Because as an initial investment, I purchased Smoke on Mac to be at BlueSpill as well. So for all intents and purposes, we had a high-end finishing suite that we could deliver straight to broadcast, straight to online, whatever, and with relatively little fuss to the client.
Yeah. And since you've managed to grow the company, you've worked on feature films, VFX, title design. Just looking at a list here, you've got Assassin's Creed, Man from U.N.C.L.E, BBC series called Little Drummer Girl, Wanderlust on the BBC, Jonathan Creek. I seem to remember you being a big fan of that, actually. And
I used to love Jonathan Creek, and actually I got really excited when I got handed that job. I work a lot with a guy called Tanvir Hanif, and he's a great guy. He's one of the nice guys of the industry. I'm really good friends with him, and he has been a friend with me for years. He threw me a bone on a job for ITV. It was for the Scylla biopic. And in fact, I believe you worked with me on it.
I did, and this actually interconnects with another podcast who actually the post-production supervisor, David O'Brien. We've already spoke, and yeah, it's a small industry, right? So yeah, you brought me in to help out on that. Yeah,
I did. We were restructuring an abandoned street in Liverpool, It's like a famous street, apparently, although I had no idea about it. And it's all boarded up and it's all graffitied and it's horrible. And we had to take it back to Liverpool in the 50s, or it was even earlier, probably. We were removing road markings, putting windows back in buildings, all this kind of jazz, extending the street. Great fun. And then ever since then, Tam's kept me busy with all kinds of fun broadcast work. And this was one that came from him for Jonathan Creek, which actually led to me going to Glasgow for a week and doing on-set supervision, which was, that was great fun, run and gun, having to make the decisions there live on the set. It's just, the stuff you can get asked to do. But again, from having that foundation from where I came from with Ragdoll, taking that risk and going like, right, okay, well, I'm going to learn here, and I'm pretty sure that what I can learn from here, I'll be able to use later on. If I hadn't had that path, when I'd come to do the Jonathan Creek job, I wouldn't have been able to do it because I would have had no experience of on-set supervision or the confidence to be able to do it.
So I suppose the moral of that story is take the opportunities as they come and go for it. I mean, if you hadn't taken the opportunity in the early days to be on set with Ragdoll, then you would have felt more confident when it mattered more. Not that you'd have known that at the time, but it mattered more, obviously, when you've got your own company, you're going on set representing your own firm, making it work for the likes of Jonathan Creek. It all translates over time, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think a lot of that comes from what we said before as well about knowing where you want to go in the industry, having that idea. I mean, there's so much available now just on the internet and out there that you can see every facet of the industry if you're looking for it. It is a dark art. I mean, post-production is a weird world that everything is segmented into so many different sections. But if you have an idea of what you want to do and where you're going for it, and you find a place that you can learn how to grow that, then that's the place to be. It's a bit different from like being in education or being, having the difference between going from college to university, being offered a 1-week position to edit some guy's, infomercial, having that for 1 week and deciding to give up your education line for that. That's a little bit different from knowing that you've actually got a career path in front of you there. Because I'd say now, I mean, especially in situations that we're in, the way the industry is, you're more likely to have the short-term positions put on you rather than people saying, hey, have an open-ended contract and let's see how you do. That's rarer now. So if you get that, leap at that.
Yeah. So yeah, you mentioned about being in Soho and why you set up in Soho to attract clients. U.N.L.E, Alison, working out of the studio there. At some point, though, you obviously needed more hands on deck. So how was it employing that first person? And when was the right time, or when did you feel like that time was coming? It must have been quite a daunting moment.
I mean, it's weird, right? It's like a weird sudden shift in the balance of power, because it's coming from freelancers, as we both were when we moved to London, having to scour for jobs and being the ones to send out the emails, and suddenly now we're the ones doing the interviewing. That's a weird position to be in. But we, that was it. It was a put out calls onto websites like Mandy and now Production Base and Broadcast, asking for CVs and asking for freelancers. At first it was, we wanted freelancers in because the jobs that we were getting were so infrequent that we knew that we could afford people for certain periods of times for certain aspects of the job, but we couldn't commit in any way to having a staff member because in 2 weeks we might have no work. We don't know.
Yeah,
we can't plan for that.
Well, and also the business is based on X amount of shots for one series, or a title design for one show, or a few shots for something. It's never, hey, here's like a 2-year contract with this particular show. So trying to predict how long the money's coming in for, and then what happened, what's coming up next. It's a big deal. At that point when you think you need to employ someone.
I mean, you're right. You use the word predict and guess, and it is. The difference is time. Once you've done it, and you've done it for a long time, then you start to see patterns in how people work, and you know how these things work in the industry, and soon you become the person that can advise and say, well, actually, it usually takes this long, and it's going to be that much. And we know now, because we've done that before and it took twice as long as we thought it was, that's what it's going to take now. So when we got our freelancer, the first freelancer we ever had in was a guy called Joe Navaski, and he's still with us today. He went from being our first freelancer to, when we got the office, it was actually the Brewer Street office. When we got that, we were still just 2 employees by then. We got that, and we got one big job. And it was a massive job that we knew there was going to be like 60 or 70 sequences in it. And this isn't 60 or 70 shots. This is sequences that could be up to a minute long. So we're like, okay, we know we're doing at least a third, if not 2/3 of this film. So we said to Joe, we said, look, we can't guarantee how long this will last, but we'd like to offer you a job. Come and work with us. And the same kind of thing as how I had with Ragdoll. Like, come and grow with us, find out where we go. Let's see what we can all do. And that ended up working really well, because Joe came in and he was like, I want to say a third wheel, but that makes us a Robin Reliant, and they're no good. I mean, it's just, it's just another piece of the puzzle that fit together with me and Now. And we ended up steamrolling forward, taking on new jobs, and then it just kept growing and growing and growing.
And still growing, because now, how many? Well, it's not just the 3 of you anymore, is it? It's a big outfit now.
No, well, there was 10 of us at last count, I think, working here, there, and everywhere because of current situations. But we've gone from being obscure, unknown people in a kitchen to being, we do as much work in America as we do here, and we get a lot of word of mouth emails and stuff comes through, and we get lucky enough to be nominated and win awards now, which was always kind of our weird thing. Like, you'd sit around the table when you'd half built this studio, and you're sitting there having a cup of tea and just going like, imagine if this place does well. Imagine if someone recognizes something we've done. Imagine if we get an award for something.
That wall is missing some awards. We need some awards on that wall.
Yes, we need some awards on there. How do we get awards?
Yeah.
How do you do that?
Yeah.
So that's interesting.
So how do you juggle being obviously a creative person, doing a creative role, with editing and onlining VFX? There's obviously a very technical aspect to the way that things are delivered. And not only that, you set up the studio, which is a technical endeavor, but then you're also a businessman. You've set up a business, you're, say, hiring and people and managing clients. So how do you juggle those 3 roles?
Yeah, that's probably the hardest part of it, because at the heart of it, me and Alison, who are the partners in BlueSpill, we're still the operators at heart. We're still the creatives. It's our baby. We want to make sure that everything looks good and everything's on our shoulders. There comes a time though where you can't do everything, and you do have to start letting go. I mean, there's too much to do. So you kind of become the Eye of Sauron. You become the overseer, and you start trusting in your team, and you build a team that are going to have the same kind of, standards as you, the same kind of aesthetics, and then you trust in them, and you let their creativity go. And suddenly you shift about from being just the people who have to run and gun and do the job to the people who are actually kind of crafting something. You're like, okay, this is all of our creations now. We're doing this. We'll do that. That's fine. And then you send it off as a team. You're like, right, great. We've all worked on that now. That's good. We're all acknowledged. I mean, just on a slight side note, it took a lot for us to change the credits of stuff, because at first, when you get credits on TV shows, I mean, you'll know this, Craig, it's a slog to get your first credit on a show. It's a big thing, and because of where we've come from, how we've done, we make sure that the people that worked on our stuff are credited for it, and we make sure that, even if they've never worked in the industry before, it's like, you did work on that. You deserve to be acknowledged for that. Make sure you go and add your name on IMDb. Here's your credit block. So changing our credit block from just like either Alison and Anthony to BlueSpill and then blocks of names under that was a big process as well. And again, came with time and confidence in like the fact of like, we can ask for this now. I think that's okay. But I mean, in terms of like juggling business and creativity, what you need to do is, when you start employing creatives and you're thinking, hey, I'm employing a lot of people now that do the job that I like doing. Why am I left with the job that I don't like doing? So you need to start bringing people on board that do the jobs you don't like doing as well. So we actually have a great. I mean, it's taken us years to get here, and again, all thanks to Alison for she's the one that will decide when we're going to make a big business decision, and I'll just either agree with it or I'll grumble, and she'll do it anyway. But she had the foresight to employ 2 people to run our admin for BlueSpill, which James and Lucy have come in, and they organize every kind of asset tracking with the clients. They deal with the scheduling of who's doing what shot per day and how that goes to the clients for review, and then feeding those reviews back to the artists, booking those in. Jobs that 4 years ago, I'd have said, well, they'll have about half an hour's work a week, if that. I mean, how can we justify employing someone for that? It's kind of like, when you have a pound's pocket money and you'll spend that pound, and then you'll get your pound's pocket money upgraded to £2, and you still spend it. You don't know what extra you bought, but it's still gone. That's what it's like staffing up a small business. It's like you start adding these people, and suddenly they all get absorbed, and they've all got stuff to do.
Yeah.
But we would know that.
Good, as long as they've got value, not just adding more people to the roster for no reason.
Just keep adding more pounds. Yeah, it's weird, and it becomes a very organic part of the process of realizing that, if you are working from 8 in the morning until 11, 12, 1 in the morning, which has been known to happen, that's the point where you step back and you go like, there's another person's job in here. There's something going wrong. Someone needs to take some slack from this. So we've built up the team.
What would you say has been your toughest decision in business then?
More than taking on staff was taking on office space. That was definitely the scariest thing, because suddenly you're in a lease and you've signed up to a year at least of that, and you know how much that's going to cost. So there's your overhead right there in front of you.
And in Soho, I imagine that's not a cheap gig, is it?
I'm not going into numbers, but let's say it's doubled over the 6 years we've been there. It's doubled. The rates and rent on that has all doubled. Having that office and knowing that that's your overhead and you need to cover that, and anything else you add on top of that is extra. That's scary when you start to see the figures in front of you. But then you have the experience and the knowledge that's like, okay, I know roughly what we're going to earn now, and I know that we'll be able to cover that, and that's fine. It gets scary again when you realize that you're getting too big for that office and you need to get another one. And that's the next scalability thing. And you're like, okay, well, I've just finished the cold sweats over the first one. Let's think about how we're going to do the second one. But it comes down to risk and reward. And the whole thing is, business is risks. It is like, okay, you will project that you're going to have this much work in. You don't know what's going to happen to the industry. You don't know what productions are going to be doing 5 months from now, but you are going to presume that your course is going to continue. And if you are going to hit a brick wall at the end of that course, you need to plan for that. I mean, a lot of our work came from, we know a lot of our clients now, so we know when big jobs are coming up, maybe like 3-4 months in advance, sometimes years. Sometimes we have a conversation with someone in a pub and we know a job is coming and it doesn't arrive for 3 years, but we know it's coming. So you can plan because of that. And we did when we got, I think it was when we got a massive job last year, we knew that we needed to hire double the amount of people and get another office. And that's what we did. And we were like, right, that job is going to pay for that. We know that is going to be okay for now. We just have to hope we can keep this going. Yeah, sustaining it.
Yeah. And how many years has BlueSpill now been operating?
What was it? It was founded in 2013. So whatever that makes it now. So 7 years now.
And you talk about office space and what have you. I mean, obviously we're in come out of lockdown now, but obviously the coronavirus has had a massive effect on how people now work, particularly in the likes of London as well, because it was a bit of a hot landscape for the COVID. How are you guys, responding to what's happened there?
So we took the steps to shut down about a week before the official lockdown, before everyone went in. We got a little bit itchy knowing that it was around and knowing that people were being exposed left, right, and centre. We were like, okay, let's plan for this and let's take the jump. So we did. We sent everyone home, thinking we'd be back in like when was that? March, April? Oh, yeah, April. We think we'd be back in April. So that worked out well, didn't it?
Yeah.
So sent everyone home. We were in the middle of delivering a job for Netflix when it happened. So I loaded up everyone with hard drives of all the jobs, and we split it all off. And I made, lots. I'd already made lots of steps in the office to make us be able to remote access stuff. So luckily, all of that I could just transfer into everyone's hands, and we could all get on. But it was a case of, do you have a machine at home that can cope with the software? If you don't, yours is on your desk. Take it. We'll arrange for you to be sent home with your machine, and you can operate it from there. And everyone's been doing that. And, luckily, everyone has had good internet connections because, we're talking about dealing with like 4K mastered EXR sequences for Netflix, and this stuff isn't small. So we're, batting terabytes of stuff back and forth to each other overall.
Are you itching to get back in, everyone in the office and working how it was pre-lockdown, or do you think there's an opportunity for a bit more flexibility and people working from home and what have you?
Oh, I think there's definitely like a shift in the tides of like, is this possible to have remote setups now? Which it definitely is. I am keen to get people back into the office, just because when you're in a creative environment and you're all working together to create something, it's a lot quicker and more fluid to all be in the same space and have that kind of that dialogue to get it working. So I'm keen for that, but also I'm not keen to give anyone a deadly virus. So I'm quite fine with keeping people at home for as long as they feel they need to be at home.
Yeah.
We have started letting, if people have requested to go back to the office, whether it's tech inabilities or they just want to be out of their house because they've started bouncing off the walls, then we've said like, that's fine. You can go in. We've prepared PPE stuff to be in the office if you want to use it. That place is, as far as we're concerned, that's safe for you to go back to, but we're not telling anyone they have to go back. Not yet.
What advice would you give your younger self? It's a question that I ask everyone here. But if you were going back,
in general, about the industry.
In the industry, preferably. But if you maybe you can revisit yourself back when you're making that decision about leaving college and going to work for Ragdoll. What advice would you give yourself now?
A lot of it would be validation for him. He's made some stupid decisions over the course of the years, but in terms of like the younger stuff with leaving college, he did the right thing. I was like, I'd tell him he did the right thing there. Yeah. But to keep doing his personal projects more, I would have said that, because that's really what makes you grow, is like your own creative vision, something you want to force through. It's when you own your own thing later on, most of it is your creative vision and you're pushing it forward. But when you're doing stuff for other people, it's easy to lose sight of that. And I would have said, keep up your own personal creativity outside of there as well. Don't just do everyone else's stuff.
Yeah.
That's what I would have said.
That's a good response. Yeah, good answer. Well, Anthony, I suppose we better wrap it up. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you for your time. Hope that was all
Always
good.
a pleasure, Craig. Always a pleasure.
You can follow Anthony on Twitter, which is @AntBrownX. So be sure to check him out. Also, check out the BlueSpill website and check out what they're doing as well. But until the next time on the Production Pod, Anthony, thanks again. See you all soon. Bye.
Bye.